What if the fastest coaching downfall in recent NFL history happened in less than 10 minutes? Because according to what's being reported out of Cleveland, that might be exactly what just happened. One moment, a rising offensive mind was standing in front of reporters, confidently shaping the narrative. Minutes later, his career may have been over. Not because of a bad play call, not because of a losing season, but because a hidden recording allegedly exposed what was really happening behind closed doors. This isn't just a story about a coach getting fired. It's a story about loyalty, control, and a rookie quarterback who may have been quietly held back by the very people meant to develop him. For months, fans were told there was a fair quarterback competition in Cleveland. They were told everything was based on merit, based on performance, based on who earned it. But now, insiders are suggesting that competition may have been a lie, that the outcome was decided long before the first snap. At the center of all of this is Shedeur Sanders, a rookie who showed flashes of greatness, a quarterback who won games when he finally got a chance. And yet somehow he was barely getting first-team reps. Publicly, the coaching staff said he was still developing. Privately, rumors were spreading that he was being deliberately limited, that the system wasn't built for him. And worse, that the people designing that system didn't believe in him at all. Then came the moment no one saw coming. During what was supposed to be a routine media day, Shedeur allegedly went live and played a recording from a closed offensive meeting. In that clip, a voice believed to be offensive coordinator Rees is heard admitting he didn't understand how to call plays for Shedeur, admitting he was holding him back. If that recording is real, it changes everything. Because that's not a disagreement. That's not a scheme issue. That's an admission that a franchise quarterback may have been sabotaged from within. And according to witnesses, when Browns owner Jimmy Haslam saw the clip, he stormed into the media room, shut the press conference down, and within minutes, Rees was escorted out of the building. But that was only the beginning. Because what followed would expose a power struggle, a broken locker room, and a quiet house cleaning that may reshape the future of the Browns. And the deeper you look into this story, the harder it becomes to believe this was ever just about football. Section 1, the hidden power dynamic, make this around 400. Here is Section 1, the hidden power dynamic, 400 words, written in the same high-retention style. Before anyone talked about leaked recordings or press conferences getting shut down, there was a relationship inside the Browns organization that quietly shaped everything. Kevin Stefanski and Rees. On paper it looks simple. Head coach and offensive coordinator. Boss and employee. But inside the building, it was much more than that. Rees wasn't just another hire. He was Stefanski's guy. Handpicked. Personally brought into the NFL. Trusted not just with play calling, but with the future of the offense. When Stefanski spoke, Rees echoed him. When Stefanski made a decision, Rees defended it. Their loyalty was a unit. And for a while, that loyalty was seen as a strength. A stable partnership. A clear vision. Two minds working in perfect sync. But in the NFL, loyalty can quietly turn into control. And according to multiple reports, that's exactly what started to happen. As the season went on, whispers began circulating through the locker room. Not about play design, not about preparation, but about power. Players started noticing that certain voices mattered more than others. That certain decisions were never questioned. That the offensive direction wasn't coming from debate. It was coming from allegiance. Around the same time, another rumor started spreading. That Kevin Stefanski was losing control of the locker room. Not in public, not in the media, but privately. Veteran players allegedly felt the energy shift. Meetings felt tense. Communication felt filtered. And at the center of it all was Rees, the loyal lieutenant, the man who enforced the vision. Sources began suggesting that Rees wasn't just running an offense. He was protecting his mentor, shielding him from criticism, controlling which narratives reached the outside world. And most importantly, controlling who got opportunities. Because in that kind of environment, football decisions stop being about performance. They become about politics, about who you trust, about who you protect, and about who you're willing to sacrifice to preserve the hierarchy. This is where the story starts to get uncomfortable. Because if Rees was truly acting as Stefanski's extension, then every major offensive decision suddenly takes on a different meaning. Every lineup choice, every practice rep, every so-called competition, all of it may have been filtered through loyalty first, and football second. And that brings us to the player who would become the biggest problem for that power structure. A rookie quarterback who didn't fit the system, didn't fit the plan, and may have never been intended to win the job in the first place. Because once Shedeur Sanders entered the building, this hidden power dynamic finally had something it couldn't quietly control anymore. Next. Here is section 2, the Shedeur problem, 400 words in the same high retention style. Shedeur Sanders didn't arrive in Cleveland as just another rookie. He arrived with expectations, with attention, with a reputation as a winner, and with the kind of composure you don't usually see from a first-year quarterback. From the outside, it looked like the Browns had a real decision to make. Two young quarterbacks, a supposed open competition, and a chance to let the best man earn the job. That's what fans were told. That's what the media repeated. But inside the building, something didn't match the story. Because almost immediately, one detail started bothering people. Shedeur was barely getting first-team reps. Not fewer. Barely any. Practice after practice, the starter snaps went somewhere else. Publicly, the coaching staff explained it away. They said it was about development, about easing him in, about long-term growth. But privately, players and staff began asking a different question. How do you compete if you're never given a real chance to compete? In the NFL, quarterback battles are decided in practice, in reps, in timing, in chemistry with the starters. And Shedeur wasn't getting any of that. The so-called competition quickly started to feel scripted. One quarterback getting the bulk of the work, the other standing on the sideline waiting. And that's when the rumors began to change tone. This wasn't about patience. It was about exclusion. Sources started claiming that Shedeur wasn't being evaluated fairly, that his mistakes were magnified, that his successes were minimized, and that the staff had already decided who they wanted under center. Even worse, some reports suggested that the system itself wasn't built for him, that the playbook favored a different style, that Shedeur's strengths were being ignored, not because he couldn't run the offense, but because the offense wasn't designed for him. And when a quarterback doesn't fit the system, two things can happen. You change the system, or you quietly remove the quarterback from the equation. According to insiders, the Browns chose the second option. They kept the competition alive in public. But behind closed doors, the reps told a different story. This wasn't a fair fight. This was a controlled environment. And Shedeur was the variable they were trying to manage. But here where it gets dangerous. Because limiting a rookie quarterback doesn't just hurt his confidence. It shapes the entire narrative around him. If he struggles, you say he's not ready. If he succeeds, you say it's too small a sample. And if he never gets enough chances, you never have to admit you were wrong. And that sets the stage for the moment that would expose everything. Because eventually, Shedeur stopped being quiet about what was happening to him. Next. Here is section 3, the public narrative vs. the private reality 400 words in the same style. From the outside, everything coming out of Cleveland sounded calm. Measured. Professional. Completely under control. Every time a microphone was placed in front of Tommy Rees, the message was the same. He praised Shedeur's toughness. He praised his poise. He praised his work ethic. He said all the right things. That the rookie was improving. That the competition was healthy. That the future was bright. To the public, it sounded like a textbook quarterback situation. No drama. No tension. Just development. But behind closed doors, a very different story was starting to circulate. According to multiple reports, Rees privately had serious doubts. Not about effort. Not about intelligence. But about fit. Sources claimed he didn't believe Shedeur matched his system, that the offense he designed wasn't built for Shedeur's strengths, and that instead of adapting the scheme, he chose to limit the quarterback. Quietly, systematically. This is where the narrative becomes unsettling. Because there's a huge difference between struggling to coach a player and deciding not to fully try. Insiders began suggesting that Rees had already made up his mind, that Shedeur wasn't his guy, that the offense would never be built around him, and that every rep he didn't get was a message. Not to the fans, but to the front office. Publicly, Rees continued to support the idea of a fair battle. Privately, sources claimed he was shaping the outcome, filtering information upward, framing evaluations, highlighting flaws, and minimizing progress. In that kind of environment, perception becomes reality. If the coordinator doesn't believe in you, everyone else eventually stops believing too. What makes this worse is how clean the public image was. There were no leaks, no angry quotes, no visible conflict, just smooth press conferences and controlled soundbites, which is exactly how powerful people prefer it. Because as long as the outside world sees stability, no one looks too closely at what's happening inside. The cracks were forming. Players were noticing the disconnect. They were hearing one story in meetings, and a completely different one in the media. And slowly, a dangerous idea started spreading through the locker room. That the quarterback situation wasn't being managed honestly. That the competition was theater. And that loyalty to the system mattered more than the performance on the field. Then came the moment that changed everything. Because according to witnesses, the private doubts that Rees had been hiding were finally spoken out loud, in a room he thought would never be recorded, and in a sentence that may have ended his career. Because once that audio surfaced, the public narrative collapsed, and the private reality finally came into the open. Next, here is Section 4, the leaked audio moment, 400 words in the same high-retention style. For weeks everything stayed quiet. No headlines, no leaks, no public tension. Whatever doubts existed about Shedeur Sanders and the offense were kept behind closed doors. And then, according to multiple reports, one moment changed the entire story. It didn't happen during a game. It didn't happen on the practice field. It happened during what was supposed to be a routine media day. Shedeur Sanders allegedly went live. No warning, no announcement, and instead of answering questions, he played a recording, a clip from a closed offensive meeting, a room that was never meant to be public, a conversation that was never meant to leave the building. In that recording, a voice believed to be Tommy Rees is heard saying something that stunned everyone who listened. That he didn't know what plays to call for Shedeur. That Shedeur was too talented for the system. And that he was holding him back because he didn't understand his game. If that recording is authentic, it changes the entire narrative. Because that's not frustration. That's not a bad day. That's an admission. An admission that a rookie quarterback may have been deliberately limited by his own offensive coordinator. Within minutes, the clip began spreading. Reporters stopped asking normal questions. Phones started lighting up. Staffers started leaving the room. And according to witnesses, someone very important was watching. Browns owner Jimmy Haslam. Sources claim that when Haslam saw the recording, he didn't wait. He stormed into the media room himself, cut the press conference short, and ended the session on the spot. No explanation. No statement. Just silence. And then came the detail that made everything feel real. According to insiders, within minutes of that interruption, Tommy Rees was escorted out of the building. Not walked out casually. Escorted. As if the decision had already been made. Now officially, the Browns never confirmed the exact reason. No public statement blamed the recording. No press release mentioned sabotage. But the timing was impossible to ignore. 1 minute, Rees was the offensive coordinator. The next, he was being removed from the facility. And that's when the story shifted from rumor to purge. Because what followed wasn't a suspension, wasn't a demotion. It was something much more final. Rees's name quietly disappeared from head coaching discussions. His future in Cleveland suddenly looked non-existent. And insiders began saying the same thing. This wasn't discipline. This was elimination. Because once that audio surfaced, there was no way to protect the old power structure anymore. And the house cleaning had officially begun. Next, here is section 5. The owner steps in 400 words in the same high-retention style. Once Tommy Rees was removed from the building, the silence from Cleveland was almost louder than any statement. No immediate press conference. No detailed explanation. No denial. Just a sudden shift in how the organization moved. And that shift started at the very top. Jimmy Haslam. For years, Haslam had been criticized for ing too much. For changing coaches too quickly. For trusting the wrong people. But this time, according to insiders, he moved with unusual clarity. Because what he was looking at wasn't a bad season. It wasn't a missed playoff run. It was the possibility that his franchise quarterback had been mishandled from day one. Sources began saying that Haslam personally reviewed the situation. Not just the recording, but the practice data, the rep counts, the internal evaluations. And that's when the picture became impossible to ignore. The so-called competition was never balanced. The starter reps were never close. The development plan was never equal. This wasn't poor management. It was a pattern. And if that pattern was driven by loyalty, then the problem wasn't just Tommy Rees. It was the entire structure he represented. That's when the purge quietly expanded. First, Kevin Stefanski was dismissed. Officially, it was framed as a normal coaching change. But inside the building, everyone understood what it meant. The mentor was gone. And now the lieutenant had no protection. Shortly after, reports began surfacing that Rees was no longer being considered for any role in Cleveland. Not head coach. Not coordinator. Not even a consultant. He was done. And then came another telling detail. Teams around the league quietly removed him from their candidate lists. A coach once labeled a rising genius suddenly became untouchable. Insiders began using the same word. Blackballed. Now, to be clear, the Browns never publicly accused Rees of wrongdoing. No official charge. No formal allegation. But in the NFL, actions speak louder than press releases. When a coach disappears overnight, when his mentor is fired, when ownership cleans out an entire leadership chain. That's not coincidence. That's a verdict. Haslam for once didn't hesitate. He chose to protect the asset that mattered most. The quarterback. Because if Shedeur Sanders was truly the future, then anyone who stood in the way of that future had to go. And that decision sent a message through the entire organization. The era of loyalty over development was over. But the consequences of that decision were just beginning. Because once ownership took control, they had to answer a much bigger question. Who inside this building could still be trusted? And that led directly to the moment when the locker room was finally asked to choose sides. Next, here is section 6. The locker room chooses sides 400 words in the same high-retention style. When the front office began cleaning house, one question suddenly mattered more than any rumor or recording. Who did the players trust? Because in the NFL, you can fake stability to the media. You can hide tension from fans. But you cannot hide a broken locker room from the men inside it. And according to multiple reports, the locker room had already made up its mind. As the coaching search began, one contrast became impossible to ignore. Tommy Rees and Jim Schwartz. Rees was given one interview. And then he was quietly removed from consideration. No second meeting. No follow-up. No explanation. At the same time, Jim Schwartz was getting a second interview. An urgent one. Ownership reportedly rushed to bring him back before other teams could steal him away. That alone told a story. But then the players made it public. Denzel Ward went on record. He said he would highly recommend Jim Schwartz for a head coaching job. Not in private. Not off the record. Publicly. And he wasn't alone. Other leaders echoed the same sentiment. They spoke about culture, about honesty, about accountability. And without naming names, they made one thing very clear. They trusted Schwartz, and they did not trust the previous power structure. This is where everything clicks into place. Because locker rooms don't turn on coaches overnight. That kind of shift only happens after months of tension. After players feel misled. After they feel decisions are being made for the wrong reasons. According to insiders, players had long sensed that Rees was more loyal to Stefanski than to the team. That he protected the system, protected the hierarchy, and sacrificed players who didn't fit the plan. By the time ownership asked for feedback, the answer was already there. One coach had the locker room. The other had lost it. And in the NFL, that's the final verdict. Haslam didn't choose based on scheme. He didn't choose based on resumes. He chose based on trust. The culture builder survived. The loyal lieutenant was eliminated. And that decision did more than decide a head coaching race. It exposed the heart of the scandal. This was never just about play calling. It was about credibility. About who told the truth. And about who used power to shape outcomes. Once the locker room spoke, there was no way to protect the old regime anymore. Because when players publicly choose one coach over another, ownership has no choice but to listen. And that left only one story still unresolved. The story of the quarterback who survived all of this. A rookie who may have been set up to fail. And still found a way to win. Because now, with the old power gone, the final question became impossible to ignore. What happens when Shedeur Sanders finally gets a fair chance? Next. Here is Section 7. Shedeur survival story 400 words in the same high-retention style. Lost in all the power struggles, leaked recordings, and coaching purges. There was one detail that never stopped surprising people. Shedeur Sanders kept winning. Not dominating. Not putting up perfect numbers. Just winning. And when you look closer at how he did it, the story becomes even more unsettling. He wasn't given a full offseason as the starter. He wasn't given consistent first-team reps. He wasn't given an offense tailored to his strengths. According to insiders, he was running a system designed by a coordinator who allegedly didn't believe in him. Think about what that means. Every young quarterback needs three things: reps, support, and a system built to protect him. Shedeur had none of those. Instead, he was dropped into games with minimal preparation. Thrown behind injured offensive lines, asked to execute plays that didn't match his style, and evaluated by coaches who may have already decided his ceiling. That's not development. That's survival. And yet, when his number was finally called, he delivered. He led late drives. He kept games close. He gave the Browns chances to win when the roster around him was falling apart. Not because the system helped him, but because he adapted to it. This is the part many people missed. When a quarterback struggles, the narrative is easy. He's not ready. He's overhyped. He doesn't have it. But when a quarterback succeeds under bad conditions, that tells you something much more important. That he might be special. Now imagine a different scenario. An offensive coordinator who believes in him. A playbook designed around his strengths. A full offseason of first-team reps. A coaching staff whose goal is to build him up, not manage him out. That's the future Cleveland is now talking about. Because with Stefanski gone, with Rees gone, the excuses are gone too. Now the organization has made a choice. They're committing to Shedeur. They're reportedly pursuing offensive linemen, wide receivers, and coaches who want to develop him, not replace him. This is why the purge mattered. Not because a coach lost his job, but because for the first time since Shedeur arrived, the path in front of him is finally clear. No more quiet limitations. No more controlled competitions. No more mixed messages. Just a young quarterback. And a chance to find out who he really is. And that leads to the final question of this story. Not what happened to Tommy Rees. Not what happened to Kevin Stefanski. But what happens next? Now that Shedeur Sanders finally has the team behind him. Next. Here is the conclusion 400 words to close the script with maximum impact and engagement. When you step back and look at everything that happened in Cleveland, one thing becomes very clear. This was never just a coaching change. This was a declaration. A declaration that the old way of doing things was over. That loyalty without accountability would no longer be protected. And that the future of the franchise would be built around a quarterback who had survived more than most rookies ever face. For months, fans were told they were imagining things. That the lack of reps didn't matter. That the competition was fair. That the system knew best. But now the evidence tells a very different story. A head coach removed. An offensive coordinator eliminated. An entire leadership chain dismantled in a matter of weeks. That doesn't happen because of one bad season. It happens when ownership believes something deeper went wrong. And whether every rumor is true or not, the actions speak for themselves. Jimmy Haslam didn't just fire a coach. He erased a structure. And he did it to protect the one asset that matters most in today's NFL. The quarterback. Now, for the first time since Shedeur Sanders arrived in Cleveland, the excuses are gone. No more blaming the system. No more blaming the scheme. No more blaming development timelines. He's about to get a full offseason. A coaching staff chosen with him in mind. And an organization that has publicly committed to building around him. That's both an opportunity and a test. Because now the spotlight is fully on Shedeur. If he succeeds, this story becomes a redemption arc. A young quarterback who survived sabotage and proved everyone wrong. If he fails, the entire purge will be questioned. Every firing, every decision, every rumor. But one thing is already certain. This offseason is a turning point. For the Browns, for the coaching world, and for a quarterback who finally has the chance he was never supposed to get. So now the question is yours. Did Tommy Rees get exactly what he deserved for his alleged role in this saga? Did Jimmy Haslam finally make the right call by cleaning house completely? Or is this just the beginning of another Cleveland rebuild? Drop your honest take in the comments. And if you believe this marks the start of a new era for the Browns, hit that like button. Subscribe. Because this story is far from over. And what happens next might define this franchise for the next decade.